Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here. So in today's video, we'll be talking about Bobby Wagner and why I believe he is going to stay another year in DC. We just got some good news about that. Also, we'll be talking about Zach Ertz and how he said he's not retiring. I also think he will be back, and also some more news about coaching, and the Washington Commanders are going to be retaining one of their best offensive coaches who has a chance, I think, to be a head coach in the next 10 years. Probably not in Washington, but elsewhere. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well. Trying to hit 15,000 subscribers. Go ahead, hit that button. We're going to be doing a giveaway at 15K. So let's get right into it. So yesterday, I believe Bobby Wagner had an Insta post, or a couple days ago, I don't know. And he basically tweeted 13 seasons and the story's not done. So at the very minimum, he's not retiring. He's not retiring, and he is going to be coming back for another season. But I really think he's going to be coming back to DC. I mean, he puts out the post with, DC as the location. I'm not going to try to, be a crazy social media analyzer here, but I feel like he would have said thank you or whatever if he was moving on from DC. I think he definitely wants to stay in DC. He has the Dan Quinn connection here, had a great season here. He knows what they're building. I think he's gonna be wanting to stay here, and he's said nothing that shows the opposite of that. So I think he will be staying here in DC and running it back. Whether it's a 1-year contract or a 2-year contract, I think he's going to be staying. And there wasn't, people didn't really know if he was going to retire or not. I think most people thought he wasn't, but there was still maybe a chance he would retire. So this kind of, puts that out the window, and at least gives the Commanders a little bit of good news where at the minimum, he's not retiring, so they have a chance of bringing him back. But again, like I said, I think he is going to come back. I think the Washington Commanders are going to re-sign him. I don't think they're going to have to pay him a lot of money. Give him, I think, something similar to what he got last year. Was like a 1-year, $5 million deal with up to $6 million in incentives. I think that's a really, reasonable deal. That's a really reasonable deal, and I think that they could go ahead and do that and bring him back for that price, and he would be a starting linebacker for them with Frankie Louvu. It doesn't mean they won't bring anyone else in, but I think Bobby Wagner is a good piece to have on this team, at least for another year. I know some people think he's lost a step, and maybe he has, but he's still a good linebacker. And losing a step when you're a first ballot Hall of Famer doesn't mean you're a bad player all of a sudden. He's still, I think, a good linebacker in this league, and we were lucky to have him this past year. And I think he would still be very beneficial to the Washington Commanders in the future. So I think run it back with him. And then Zach Ertz, this is a while ago. This is old news, but I just want to mention it because it's kind of on the same theme as Bobby Wagner. But he says, I don't know what the future holds. I still want to play football next year. I just want to make that clear. I'm not retiring. So he already said he's not retiring. I think it's another guy that if we don't give him a respectable offer, then he would go elsewhere. But I think his priority would be staying here. Definitely the number one, destination I think he wants is to stay in DC. And I think the Washington Commanders feel the same way. I'm sure Jaden Daniels feels the same way. Adam Peters has a good connection with Zach Ertz, and he has Tavita Pritchard. That's how he said to say it, Tavita Pritchard, but I thought it was Tavita. But regardless, he went to Stanford, played quarterback there. I think they overlapped. I'm pretty sure they overlapped. If they didn't overlap as players, he definitely coached him, but I know they had some overlap at Stanford. I believe, though, it was with players. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. Zach Ertz has ties in this organization. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury, too, was his OC in Arizona for a couple years, so that's another connection. And obviously, he really likes playing with Jaden. He said he wishes he was, still 22 and could play the whole rest of his career, long rest of his career with Jaden. And some Eagles fans took that as a slight. I don't think it was a slight to them. I think it was just, he wishes he could play his whole career, long career with Jaden Daniels as his QB, and you know that's not necessarily going to be the case. It might be a few years, but it's not going to be 10, 15 years like maybe he wanted or wants it to be. But yeah, Zach Ertz, bring him back on a reasonable deal, 1 year, 2 year deal. You know, if Ben Sinnott had a good year this past year, then you could maybe consider not bringing back Ertz or not bringing in another tight end. But he didn't have a great year. Not saying I'm giving up on him at all, but like I said, did not have a good year. And, you know, I think you bring back Zach Ertz, you continue to develop Ben, and maybe bring in another tight end in the draft. You know, this draft class is pretty good. Develop those guys, see who's, you know, the better one out of those two, the rookie they bring in, whoever that is, and then you know, Ben, and see who steps up out of those two. I like, you know, there's some good tight ends in this class for sure. Obviously, you got the top names, but, you know, some other guys that are good as well. You know, Harold, I think his name's Harold Finnan or whatever. I talked about him in yesterday's video from Bowling Green. I don't know why I clicked that. Bowling Green, he had a good Senior Bowl for sure, so that's something to consider there. And then real quick, let's talk about this. So Washington blocked assistant quarterback David Blau from interviewing for the Jets job. I believe also there was another job too, maybe the Bears, but I think, you know, this is good. David Blau, he obviously played quarterback in the NFL for a little bit. He's been working, you know, as the assistant quarterbacks coach right now for the Commanders, and you can only block in an interview. So the Commanders blocked it because it wasn't a significant promotion. You know, some of them were promotions because it was a pass game coordinator, but you can only block it if, you know, let's say the Jags were interviewing him for an offensive coordinator spot. In that case, the Commanders would not be able to block it, but since it was not a coordinator position, they were able to block it. He has a good connection with Cliff. I think if Cliff ever decides to leave, let's say Cliff Kingsbury decides to go to, I don't know, whatever next year, because, you know, he's running it back. That was reported this past week. But let's say he decides to go next year to, I don't know, the same, whatever team you want to name that has a head coaching opening. He decides to go there, well, like maybe the Giants. Then I think David Blau would go with him to be his OC, because that was a Cliff Kingsbury hire. David Blau and him have a good relationship. The only thing is, all right, if Cliff goes to the Giants or whatever team, I don't even want to put that into existence, the Giants, but whatever team he goes to, if David Blau goes there, he's not going to be the play caller. It's going to be Cliff. So maybe he would be inclined to stay in Washington, get that promotion to OC, and be the play caller, because obviously Dan Quinn is a defensive guy and he's not going to be calling plays. So David Blau would be calling the plays in Washington. So I think this is good news. That's a problem to worry about in next year. At the very minimum, he's going to be back here. The Commanders have a lot of guys on the offensive staff that, you know, have good experience and honestly have a chance to be an OC or a head coach in the future. I mean, you got Anthony Lynn, who has experience as OC, I believe, and definitely as a head coach with the Chargers. You got Tyler Pritchard, who, you know, I think has a bright future in the league as well. David Blau, like I said. Brian Johnson was an OC in the past, got interviewed for some OC jobs, I believe. So the Commanders got a lot of guys on this roster that I believe have a future as, you know, head coaches or, you know, or OCs. And that's a good problem to have. Again, we haven't had that in a while. I mean, I guess we did have that problem a little bit for a few year stretch with, you know, the Jay Gruden era with McVay, and then O'Connell when Rivera came in, decides to move on from him and hire Scott Turner. So we did have a little bit of that, but not with success. Now we have a lot of good pieces on the roster too, and you got a franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels, so it's going to definitely incentivize someone like David Blau and Cliff Kingsbury to stay a little bit longer than they normally would. But that is it for today's video. If you guys did enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and comment down below what free agent you really want to see back. Maybe a sleeper guy, maybe just one of the big names like Bobby and Zach, who I definitely think they need to bring back. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.